Hello, Cliff Stanwyck Real Estate, and today we're talking about a brand new listing agreement for sellers to save commission. It's called the Open Listing Agreement, and I'm here today to talk about it. My name is Cliff Stanwyck. I'm a real estate broker in South Placer County. I've been at it since about 2004, so almost 20 years. And this is probably great news for sellers who don't necessarily value the commission that they're going to pay to sell their house. And it's going to also essentially turn the sale of the house into where only the agency that brings you a buyer, or a brokerage that brings you a buyer, is going to get paid. So I want to discuss a few things and go over right now what these listing agreements are. So typically, the when you list a house, it is an exclusive right to sell listing. So it's a contractual agreement under which the listing broker acts as the agent or as a legally recognized non-agency representative of the sellers, and the sellers agree to pay commission to the listing broker regardless of whether the property is sold through the efforts of the listing broker, the seller, or anyone else, and a contractual agreement under which the listing broker acts as an agent or as the legally recognized non-agency representative of the sellers, and the sellers agrees to pay a commission to the listing broker regardless of whether the property is sold through the efforts of the listing broker, the sellers, or anyone else, except that the seller may name one or more individuals as entities as exemptions in the listing agreement, and if the property is sold to any exempted individual or entity, seller is not obligated to pay a commission to the listing broker. That's a lot, right? So what does it mean? It means that if you, and you haven't had this option, when you sign the typical exclusive agency right to sell, the brokerage gets paid the entire commission, and through sub-agencies, they give half the commission or whatever you've negotiated to the buyer's agent. On the other hand, if you haven't exempted any parties from the agreement, you're still going to pay the broker. So how would that work? Well, let's say you list your house and all of a sudden a coworker comes up to you and says, "Hey, oh wow, I wish I knew you were selling your house. I would have bought it." And then you go, "Darn," right? Well, if you exempt people in the listing, that is great. What we do to keep you from doing that is telling you that if you bring the buyer from one of these people that are exempted, then you get to deal with all the paperwork. We're not going to represent you. So it's kind of a thing that, again, because you don't know how to manage it, it becomes a problem, right? So let's hop back into the into this stats again. So here we are with the exclusive right to sell. Okay, so let's talk about the other agreement, because the other agreement is one that you probably would have liked to have seen, and that's the exclusive agency listing. And I'll be doing a video on this as well. This is the same thing as a exclusive, it's not an exclusive right, but it is exclusive agency from the standpoint that if a buyer contacts the agent and buys the house, you're paying the broker. But on this listing, if you bring a buyer, you're not paying the buyer's the buyer's broker's commission, right? So the other piece of it is, again, is if you use this agreement, as it says here, if the property is sold through the efforts of the sellers is not obligated to pay a commission to the listing broker. So the bottom line is that if you end up using this agreement, you have another issue with who's going to do your paperwork, right? And the issue is that this form isn't necessarily set up for the negotiation of that, all right? So let's talk about the last form that's out there, and that is the the open listing, right? So this is the open listing. A contractual agreement under which the listing broker acts as the agent or as a legally recognized non-agency representative of the sellers, and the sellers agree to pay a commission to the listing broker only if the property is sold through the efforts of the listing broker. These definitions are provided to facilitate categorizations of listings in the MLS compilation. Any area of conflict or inconsistency, state law regulation takes precedent. If state law permits brokers to list property on either an exclusive or open basis without establishing an agency relationships, listings may not be excluded from the MLS compilations on the basis that the listing broker is not the seller's agent. So again, right, these are the different types of listings. So what's the real huge advantage of an open listing? The huge advantage of the open listing is you're not paying that listing broker the commission for the buyer unless they bring the buyer. You may just think that they don't bring a lot to the table, so you're only going to pay the buyer's agent. If the buyer contacts you, you're not going to pay anybody any commission. If you find a buyer, you're not going to pay anybody a commission. Now, that seems to be too good to be true, and it kind of is, right? So now we're going to step into the listing agreement, the open listing agreement, and go through it, right? So the open listing agreement, which starts here, okay? The first thing is you're going to use an agent to list your house. How it works is he's only going to get paid, or she's only going to get paid if they bring the buyer, okay? That's how it works. But you're going to sign a listing agreement. That means you are going to enter into agency, have them represent you as a buyer's agent, but not necessarily a seller's agent. But that becomes a little part of a challenge in this agreement, and we'll go through that when we get to it. But let's get back to the listing agreement. So the listing agreement, and this is brand new, goes over, and see, it was just brand new. It was done right at the end of June. This is July. And it basically goes through and it talks about compensation to brokers. And the amount of rate of real estate commission is not fixed by law. They are by each broker individually and may be negotiable between seller and broker. Real estate commissions include all compensation and fees to broker. Well, again, this is a little complicated because when you get into the form, it says down here on 3F, subsection 3, that if the property is sold to anyone listed above during the time seller is obligated to compensate another broker, broker is not entitled to compensation under this agreement, and broker is not obligated to represent seller in such transaction. Section G. This is a non-exclusive agency listing. Seller reserves the right to sell the property either directly to a purchaser or through another broker without any obligation to pay compensation to broker unless otherwise specified in paragraph C above or elsewhere in writing. Now, that's a thing that after I review this agreement that you're really going to have to think through, okay? And you're also going to, again, this is a great exercise to look at this thing where you're only paying a commission for the agency or agent who brings a buyer to buy your house. You're using this agreement to pay that commission. If you bring a buyer, you're not paying any commission, but we have this matter of the MLS, right? And we're going to go through the advantage of this open listing, which is the marketing of the property, and why it's a huge advantage over for sale by owner is because you have the power of the MLS. Basically, you're getting the keys to the kingdom of why houses sell. It's because the searches are started online, and this is where buyers find their house. They're not going to know that this house is an open listing either, by the way. Only the agents are going to know. right? And depending on how this is set up and how you are found, again, this is an opportunity. So let's talk about the listing agreement. Let's pop back in here and take a look at the listing agreement. So it's very typical to an exclusive agency listing. You're going to have to go through a bunch of items here. And now we're talking about the MLS. Now, the MLS is why you're using an open listing besides for sale by owner. It's because you want the best place for your home to be found. This home will be on Zillow. This home will be on Realtor.com, and it'll be on Redfin, it'll be on Trulia, it'll be on Coldwell Banker, it'll be on Keller Williams, it'll even be on Sotheby's, okay? It'll be everywhere, right? And so here's the section where we talk about how the MLS works, and this is what it says. You know, what information is provided in the MLS? All terms of the transaction, including sales price and financing applicable, will be on the MLS, okay? And then is listed for publication, dissemination, use by persons or entities, right? And this talks about what the broker MLS is, and this talks about the benefits, okay? And this also talks about marketing the property, right? And then, you know, we get to essentially part of your instructions to the broker that you want to market this property to the public and you want marketing to start on a date, okay? This is all the information and the MLS data on the internet, okay? The feature opt-outs, all right? Talks about the seller representations, right? That you are agreeing represents that are otherwise specified in writing. You're unaware of any notice of default against the property or delinquent accounts or any bankruptcy or insolvency and all that stuff, right? The broker's duties and responsibility and limitations, right? They're supposed to basically exercise reasonable effort and due diligence to achieve the purposes of this agreement unless seller gives prior written instructions to the contrary. Broker is authorized but not required to order reports and disclosures, including those in paragraph 10E as necessary, advertise and market the property by any method and in any medium selected by the broker, including MLS and internet, and to the extent permitted by these media, control the dissemination of the information submitted to any medium, and disclose any real estate license, making an inquiry, the receipt of any offers on the property, and the offering price of such offers. So basically, that's part of the seller's duties, right? The other thing is the presentation of offers, right? And this is where the seller instructs broker to present offers, and then the seller instructs broker not to present offers until a specified date. This all works really good if your broker the listing broker brings the offer, because remember, you're only paying the buyer's broker in this agreement, right? So if he doesn't bring the offer, he's not going to be presenting your offer either, right? But again, you can have seller instructions in the MLS that says you are going to review offers on a certain date, and that will basically take care of this desire if you wish to have the house on the market for 10 or 12 days, okay? So we bring up some of these buyer supplemental offer letters. They're kind of problematic. I have a much longer video about listing agreements, right? And on the exclusive one, you can read about them. I recommend that you do not review any buyer's letters. Investigations and reports. This is a pretty important part of the agreement, especially when it comes to selling your house. It recommends, and that you basically, it's here, you should get it, right? It's recommending a structural pest report, a general property inspection, homeowner association docs, preliminary title report, roof inspection, pool inspection, septic sewer inspection, other. If you have a well or a well, you'd probably want to have a well inspection. If you have, of course, the septic sewers covered off here, right? you're going to indemnify and defend and hold the broker harmless of all claims, disputes, litigation, judgments, attorney's fees, and costs from any incorrect or incomplete information supplied by you and from any material facts from seller known, right? Talks about the deposit, okay? Talks about the agency relationship. And again, there is no seller's agency relationship in an open listing, okay, unless you do something with 3-C. And again, don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but let's talk about it, right? So again, this goes through it. You really need to read everything on these listing agreements, okay? Now, this talks about security insurance, showings, audio, and video. And here's the part, again, that is really important. Photographs and internet advertising, okay? If you are not engaging that listing broker and retaining him as your selling agent, this is probably the biggest challenge of the open listing agreement, and you really need to find out where you're going to get your photos, where are you going to get a 3D walkthrough, and i.e. a Matterport, what kind of marketing are you going to do for this house, right? It needs great photos. It really needs 3D walkthrough, all right? It really needs floor plans. If you've gone out and watched my video, Every Buyer Marketing, I personally do everything, okay? I not only do I do the photos and the 3D walkthrough, I do floor plans, I do a cinematic video, I do floor plans, I also do drone shots, I'll add twilight shots, I'll do whatever I can to basically appeal to as many buyers as possible. Well, you don't have a listing broker on this right now, right? You got some guy that's going to put stuff on the MLS. And, another issue here is that he's not going or she's not going to get paid unless they bring a buyer. So the conundrum here is, how much are you willing to compensate them, i.e. that paragraph 3, subparagraph C, how much are you willing to pay for them to help you do some of these tasks? Or are you going to do it all by yourself, right? So let's talk about section 15, which is the key safe lockbox. The key safe lockbox, we got electronic front door locks where you can put a temporary code in there where you can actually allow people to get into the house with a unique code. You really don't need a key safe lockbox, okay? I do recommend that if you are selling a tenant occupied property, you really need to discuss your options. Tenant occupied properties are very challenging, and personally with the property management or your rental agreement, it may be very problematic for you to be able to show a tenant occupied property. So I will put this out there. If you have a tenant occupied property, you should probably not use this agreement. The sign, you don't need a sign, but you could have a sign. You could have a sign with your own number on it. You could do something and have that broker that you had do the listing in order to give him incentive to do the paperwork. You may want to let them have their sign on the property. I would say it doesn't hurt you to have the sign on the property. The other part of this thing is, some of the additional terms, right? And whether you're selling in a trust, whether or not it's a short sale or an REO advisory, and then whether or not you need a contingency for replacement property, or you need some other aspects of the sale, like maybe you need time to move off the property or you need a rent back, for example. Again, all these agreements need to be approved by the managing broker in the broker's office. And so even if you sign these agreement, you best make sure that the agent you're using to do these agreement has the authority to do so, because they're not going to get any commission unless they bring a buyer. And their brokerage may have a minimum fee that they're going to have to pay on a transaction, right? So again, I'm an independent broker. I'm not showing you this video because I won't do an open listing. I'm showing you this video because I will do an open listing. You just have to negotiate what you think my time and effort is worth, and we have to agree to it. All right. Dispute resolution. Again, I've gone over dispute resolution. You need to watch my hour and a half or 2 hour video on the exclusive agency and right to sell listing agreement. I'll put a link in the video here. And then again, right, the entire agreement, this basically, gets back to this thing that all real estate is in writing. Okay, so you go through that, you sign this thing, you get a broker's signature, and you've signed the listing agreement. So again, this open listing agreement, this gives you the most flexibility to save on commissions, because not only are you saving it on commissions if you bring a buyer, you're only paying the buyer's agent a commission. Now, the listing agent can be a buyer's agent if they bring you a buyer. The problem is, or the challenge is you using an open listing agreement, is how are you going to get what all the things in the seller advisory is done, right? So we're going to go over the seller advisory because this is another key part of getting back that you have to think long and hard about the compensation that you may want to offer the person or the brokerage who put the house on the MLS. So let's go back and look at the part of seller advisory, right? So this is we're trying to scare you and not do an open listing. And here's how it starts. Selling property in California is a process that involves many steps from start to finish. It could take anywhere from a few weeks to many months, depending on the condition of your property, local market conditions, and other factors. Okay, we're selling a little bit of fear here, right? The reality of it is that the goal of selling your house should be selling it in what is a typical sales time. Even with these high interest rates, if your house has been properly prepared for sale and marketed for sale and is accessible by buyers, meaning they can come tour your house, you should sell your house in less than 2 weeks, right? So let's just hop back in here again, right? But here's the part where you really are going to wish you had a real estate agent for the listing process. General disclosure duties. You must affirmatively disclose to the buyer in writing all known facts that material affect the value or desirability of your property. I don't know what desirability is, but you're supposed to disclose it. You must disclose these facts whether or not asked about such matters by the buyer, any broker, or anyone else. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter. Anyone comes to your house, they ask you about something, you have to say, I don't know, or here's the report, or that's something you can investigate, right? So the bottom line is that the general disclosure duties are the most burdensome part of an open listing. And this is the part where you really want to think about what you want to compensate the broker or the listing agent that's helping you get all this information on the MLS. So let's continue. So now we're talking about statutory duties, right? So basically, you must prepare and deliver to the buyer, among other things, a real estate transfer disclosure statement and a natural hazard disclosure statement. You have a legal obligation to fill out the TDS in its entirety, honestly and completely. Many local entities or organizations have their own supplement to the TDS, and you may be asked to complete yes and no. The NHD is a statement indicating whether your property is in a certain designated flood, fire, or earthquake, seismic hazard zones. Third-party professional companies can help you with this task. And third-party companies are your solution for, solving this problem. Okay, you get an NHD report, and basically a lot of the natural hazard disclosure is handled for you. Okay, so don't be scared by any of this. This is just why we're trying to scare you. You don't sell your house home. This is not rocket science. I can tell you it's not mechanical engineering either, So anyway, let's hop back in. So essentially, there's some other things here. Depending upon the age and type of construction of your property, you may be required to provide, in certain cases, receive legal protection by providing the buyer with booklets. Again, the listing agent has access to these booklets, and again, since you already know these forms, you should do it. Now, there is some thing that is pretty important here, and we're getting down here. It's in section 3. Again, a lot of this is covered off in the NHD report, right? But another form that comes up in the TDS is actually the fire hardening and defensible space around your house. That is a big part of the agreement, right? So you need to know a certain thing about your property. And again, I really think it's really beneficial for you to figure out what a commission or what compensation you should pay the agent who is putting your house on the MLS. So anyway, down here, number 4, if the TDS NHD led fire hardening defensible space, military ordinance, commercial zone, or special tax disclosures are provided to a buyer after you accept the buyer's offer, the buyer will have 3 days after delivery or 5 days if mailed to terminate the offer, which is why it's extremely important to complete these disclosures as soon as possible. My recommendation is to complete these disclosures before you list the house, okay? Or put it on the market, I should say. There are certain exemptions from these statutory requirements. However, if you have actual knowledge of any of these items, you may still be required to make a disclosure, as the items can be considered material facts. Now, here's the thing you need to know. This is about death and other disclosures. This is what happens if someone has died on the property and what your duties of disclosure are. This talks about contract terms and legal requirements. This is a contract. These are things that you need to be aware of. The contract terms and condition, the withholding tax, the provision against discrimination, the government required repairs, replacements, and alterations, EPA lead-based paint renovation, repair, and painting rule program, and then legal tax and other implications. Again, real estate agents have no ability to offer you any legal advice, all right, or tax advice or other implications. Selling your property may have legal, tax, insurance, life, title, and other implications. You should consult appropriate professional for advice on these matters. Biggest mistake, and probably why you don't want to pay the real estate agent, is you've already figured out all your legal, tax, and other implications, and you just don't feel like paying the real estate agent 2.5% or 3% to sell your house. Okay, so let's get back again to the agreement. Now, this gets back into the screen share. Marketing considerations. This is really key as well. And again, the big challenge here is this listing agent is only going to get paid if he brings you the buyer. So are you going to get shortchanged on the marketing? Why would he over market the house if he's the only one that's going to get paid, right? He only gets paid if he brings you a buyer, right? So this is the conundrum of an open listing. But the benefit of the open listing is you're not going to overpay the listing agent for doing nothing. You're not going to essentially be prohibited from bringing a buyer when that house goes on the market and you tell everybody on social media that your house is for sale. You basically don't pay a commission, right? So here we go. Pre-sale inspections and considerations. You should consider what you can do to prepare your property for sale, such as correcting any defects or other problems, making cosmetic improvements, and staging. Many people are not aware of defects or problems of the property. One way to make yourself aware is to obtain professional inspections prior to sale. Pre-sale inspections may include a general property inspection, an inspection for wood-destroying pests and organisms, and an inspection of septic or well systems, if any, among others. By doing this, you have the opportunity to make repairs before your property is sold, which may enhance its marketability. Keep in mind, however, any problems revealed by such inspection reports or repairs that have been made should be disclosed to the buyer. See disclosures in paragraph 2 above. This is true if the buyer gets their own inspections covering the same area. Obtaining inspection reports may also assist during contract negotiations with the buyer. For example, if the structural pest control board has a primary and secondary recommendation for clearance. You may want to specify in the purchase agreement those recommendations, if any, for which you are going to pay. Post-sale protections. It's also helpful to provide the buyer, among other things, a home protection warranty plan for the property. These plans will have generally cover properties not deemed to be pre-existing that occur after your sale is complete. In the event something does go wrong after the sale and is covered by the plan, the buyer may be able to resolve the concern by contacting the home protection company. C, safety precautions. Advertising and marketing your property for sale, including but not limited to holding open houses, placing a key box, lockbox, erecting for sale sign, and disseminating photographs, videotapes, and virtual tours of premises may jeopardize your personal safety and that of your property. You are strongly encouraged to maintain insurance and take any or all possible precautions and safeguards to protect yourself, other occupants, visitors, your property, your belongings, including cash, jewelry, drugs, firearms, other valuables located on the property against injury, theft, loss, vandalism, damage, and other harm. Expenses. You are advised that you, not the broker, are responsible for the fees and costs, if any, to comply with your duties and obligation to the buyer of the property. Okay, let's circle back. Why do you want to use an open listing agreement? Because you don't think the listing agent isn't any good, and you really want to negotiate that part of it. Okay. Second reason, you don't want to pay the buyer's broker. You have that opportunity. I would recommend against that being a part of your marketing. At the end of the day, you're not having one agent on one side, and that agent is going to think they're going to have to do a lot of work because you don't have the agent, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? So I recommend, because if you go out on Zillow, you will see what the buyer broker's offer of compensation is, and you want to be competitive, right? You don't want to be that person paying nothing to sell your house. There are buyers out there. They are aggressively buying. Trust me when I tell you this. Agents are paid by commission only at the close of escrow. If you have a non-competitive commission, it is doubtful that they are going to fight very hard to win that house if there's something that they feel is easier to do and B, pays them more money, right? So it is about money in real estate. It always is. It's money for you. It's money for them. At the end of the day, if you really want to streamline or you want to have the best opportunities to save commission, then I recommend an open listing. The second piece is I recommend that you offer some compensation to the person who lists your house. If you believe that they have some value, like they can negotiate all the counter offers and everything else. If you don't have an understanding of the contract, again, I recommend that you watch my YouTube channel and go over all the content I have on there. I'll tell you how to buy your house because I want you to be every bit as informed as I am and to be as competent as I am. Not that I'm competent. We all make mistakes, but I want to be competent. And you should want to be competent too. You need to be a real estate agent in your own, mind. In my mind, you need to be one. Why? Because it's a huge part of your, wealth creation strategy. Not that I'm offering financial advice, right? So again, personally, I would go out and figure out what it would be worth if someone has to negotiate an offer that is brought to me, right? And I think there's resources out there that can do it for a reasonable amount of money and not 2.5% or 3%. So I've given you a lot to think about. Open listings are a great option for you to save on commission without discounting your house, because at the end of the day, you're paying the agent that you believe, right? You don't believe the listing agent brings a lot of value, but you want the buyer. And if the buyer has an agent, you're willing to pay him. It's a great option. I will encourage you to talk to your real estate professional about whether they're willing to do an open listing and why you want an open listing. It's really the simplest way if you think you're going to sell your house. It's really the easiest way to sell your house. Just get the services from the listing agent that you believe or that will help you be successful, right? Again, if you want to discuss open listings, contact me. I'll put a link in the description. You can reach out to my website, contact me. I'm more than happy to always talk about real estate and help you. At the end of the day, there's nothing I can do to change your mind whether you think I'm worth paying 2.5% for. I'm not going to try to convince you if you come to me with an open listing that's the game. I'm just going to say, you want to do open listings, I can help. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time today. It always goes longer than I want them to, but I have other videos about how to list and sell your house, and I will post links, and a lot of information is on my YouTube channel. Again, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I wish you the best of luck selling your house in this new market. Thank you.